Hey, what's going on, folks? Yes, we're talking about episode 4 of We Own This City. And to me, this is probably the most intense episode out of the 4 so far. But I'm sure it's going to get even more intense as we keep going because we haven't even interviewed Mr. Jenkins yet. So who knows how that's going to be. And the reason why I say this is probably the most intense episode, this is the one where they actually dive into some detail about the riots that happened after the unfortunate death of Freddie Gray. And prayers and condolences to his family and friends. I'm sure that's just still has to haunt them to some degree. So, as I mentioned, yeah, this is probably going to be the most intense one. We actually see Wayne Jenkins get into, I guess, just his big bad cop mode during the riots. And he's a menace, bro. Just straight up a menace. So, we're going to get into it. And thanks for tuning in. Let's get into it. Yes. Thank you for joining another episode of Just My Opinion with Ryan. And as I mentioned in the intro, yes, Wayne Jenkins is a menace. And he had to be stopped because hot damn. But so we're going to get into that and let's get right into it. For those, if this is your first time here, please hit that like and subscribe button. And for those who are returning, thank you very much. Let's get into it. So we started this episode with Wayne Jenkins and his partner. At the time, they're on the beat doing their thing, surveilling the city, trying to stop crime. And they notice, well, not they, but Wayne Jenkins notices that there is a male who's well over the age of 18 with a backpack on. And with whatever type of detective sleuth skills he has, he automatically assumes that the person must have drugs on him. So they try to pull him over. The guy panics, and it is a crazy, dangerous car chase throughout Baltimore, which unfortunately ends up killing the husband of an elderly couple who happened to be just driving along themselves, minding their business. And so that's already just horrible. So they actually pull over the guy, get him out the car, and they start searching the bag. They start searching the cars. And what do you know? There are no drugs. There is no gun, anything. He appears to be clean. They don't necessarily say how much time has passed, but definitely quite some time has passed, and they are just tearing his car apart from top to bottom, trying to find something that they could pin this guy in. Because otherwise, you just randomly, chase an innocent victim for no damn reason, and because of this, an elderly man had passed away. So as time passes, they eventually find something when one of his colleagues from the gun trace task force searches the car one last time. And that one last time, he just so happens to catch some drugs. I'm just going to go ahead and say it. Drugs were planted so they could save their own ass. Because otherwise, it just looks extremely, extremely horrible. Which it is. It is horrible. They're trying to save face as if they had some type of probable cause for this whole BS they got going on. So I'm sure they're going to come back to that in the next episode. If you stay for the previews, that's going to end bad. As I said before, and I may repeat it a few more times if you don't mind, but Wayne Jenkins was a damn mess. Strippers could get it too, apparently. Wayne Jenkins and his boys go into a strip club, do the damn thing, having a good night, all this other stuff. Wayne Jenkins goes in the back as if he's about to get extra lucky. Something happens where, hey, it didn't go down. The stripper's money falls. Wayne Jenkins steals it, and he steals the stripper's money and runs out the champagne room and urges his guys just to come on. Don't ask any questions. Let's go. So Wayne Jenkins, he's already a menace just from stealing from strippers who are already working hard for their money. And also, he's also trying to push some drugs or push some weight as well. He's working hand in hand with the bail bondsman, they're tight like that. So that's another shit storm coming. and it just gets ugly. And I think that bail bondsman, he's going to get caught somehow, and maybe start singing too. I don't know. But this is just, yeah, man. It just gets wilder and wilder the more you watch this, and sometimes I just look back and I can't even believe that it's a true story. The thing that stuck out to me the most about this episode is how you can have one common thing, but two different sides of the law can look at it and have two completely different perspectives. On one hand, you got the police force who they look at the gun trace task force almost like legends, almost like rock stars. Hey man, they doing their thing, man. They getting guns off the streets, they making arrests. Yeah, they got some complaints, but of course it's going to happen. Complaints are going to come because people don't like to get messed with by the cops. On the other hand, side that I empathize the most with, you have the people of Baltimore getting harassed for no reason. They're getting beat up. They're getting chased down for no reason. They're having guns and drugs planted on them, even if they're clean. So that's the side I'm on. That's the side I feel sorry for the most. And of course, they look at that same gun trace task force the same way I look at them, and the same way I'm sure all you guys are looking at them. These guys need to be taken off the streets. These guys need to be taken off the streets. This is just horrible. And you see why it's horrible. So yeah, and that's one thing I noticed. The Freddie Gray tragedy that happened, that was one of the turning points of the story, it seems like, in the sense that it further made Wayne Jenkins a legend to his peers, while it further, tore a bigger rift between the people of Baltimore and the gun trace task force. He was, of course, although he wasn't involved in the Freddie Gray arrest and death, but when it came to the aftermath of the riot happening in Baltimore, Wayne Jenkins was one of the people front and center of the front line. He's the loudest, the most vocal, and he was like the biggest, I guess, emotional leader when it came to that. And so it was very hard to watch. Prayers and condolences to Freddie Gray's family. And for the record, I mean, it's one of those things where I may not agree with it, but I totally understand. I don't agree necessarily with rioting, but I totally understand why riots are necessary. It's almost like, okay, as I mentioned just a few moments ago, I'm already getting, killed with no weapon. I'm already getting guns and drugs planted on me, even if I'm clean. You beat me up for no reason. I can't hang out in front of my own house, or you could call me loitering in front of there's all these things. And so when that Freddie Gray death happened in Baltimore, that was just the tipping point, because it's been said before that riots are just the way for the unheard to be heard. The people of Baltimore are frustrated, and Freddie Gray's death was just that tipping point, and therefore the riot started. So as I mentioned, I don't necessarily, agree with riots. That's the best way for me to put it. I don't agree with riots, but I completely understand. And so that just really frustrated me watching that all over again. And the other thing, when it came to some of the tactics that Wayne Jenkins was using, as I mentioned, if you were over the age of 18 and you was walking around with a book bag, he automatically assumed that you had guns and drugs on you. And the reason why I find that to be scary, especially if they're going to pull you over and plant stuff, or pull you over and illegally search your car. Like, I live in the DMV area. I've done, and as a side gig, I do photography. Excuse me. And I've done photography all throughout DMV, from Baltimore to other areas in Maryland, DC, certain parts of Virginia. So that mindset would just have me all kinds of fucked up if I ran into the wrong crooked cop. You see me walking around with a book bag, you illegally search my stuff, you find out I'm clean. Perhaps you don't want to get further embarrassed and you plant drugs on me or a gun and think my life is over. And that's what these guys were doing. And that's why I feel like it was so vital for someone to try to call this out, because these cops were ruining lives. And I think at one point, one of the guys who was interviewed said, there's a Wayne Jenkins everywhere. And I truly believe that there's a Wayne Jenkins in somewhere, in all 50, in all the states. There's a Wayne Jenkins. And so that's the thing that really is scary. There's a Wayne Jenkins for everybody, for every state in this country. Hell, it's probably even worse internationally in some places. But I digress. And one of the other things that I found disturbing was when they actually went to court, or they was trying to pull in jurors to actually hear out a case that involved the cop. And out of 90 jurors, only 7 could be selected to witness this case, because, without any type of bias, opinion, or outlook towards the cop. And some of the stories were just sad to hear. One guy said, I attended a Black Lives Matter rally, and police beat me up just because I was there. I didn't cause any violence first. I'm actually a pacifist. And then they whooped my ass anyway. Another guy, I believe he said he was just hanging out in front of his house and got arrested for loitering. And of course, the charges got dropped when he was brought to the station. But in addition to that, his son ended up with stitches because a police officer assaulted the son. He didn't just say how old the son was. I'm assuming teenage, but a police officer assaulted the son and claimed that he only assaulted him out of self-defense. And the father was right there as an eyewitness and said his son didn't do anything and it didn't matter. And just the way that the paperwork was worded or something like that, they really couldn't follow up and do some type of civil suit. So just so many cases, it was just an eye-opening message of how messed up the Baltimore police system was. Probably still is, which is even sadder. So stuff like that is crazy. And, shout out to the woman who's working with the Department of Justice, who is doing her damnedest to beat the streets and find out why these corrupt cops are still working. Why do they even still have jobs? And that's also frustrating to hear as well. Like, I swear sometimes when it comes to certain things and politics and government this and whatever the case, sometimes you just get fed a lot of bullshit. And that's what the Department of Justice worker is experiencing. Herself and her colleague, they go to the commissioner and they ask, why are these cops not off the streets yet? They got so many complaints. They got this and the third. They've been caught for perjury, but yet they still have jobs. Like, what's going on? And I can't recall the response from the commissioner. The commissioner was somewhat honest, but I do believe clearly something more needs to be done. And that's the one. That was the one talking point that she was talking to a colleague about when they left the commissioner's office. Like, this has been going on even before the gun trace task force was formed. How is it that so many cops? How is it that these cops have so many complaints? They've been called out for perjury, on numerous occasions, yet they're still on the job. They're still on the beat. They're still doing their thing. Of course, it goes deeper than the gun trace task force, right? I believe that there are other members who, within that police department in Baltimore, they knew what was going on. They probably knew that these guys are dirty, but because of that, that code of silence or, whatever type of policeman code some of these guys may follow, they may have turned the other head. They might have just turned the other cheek, act like they ain't seen anything. Turn a blind eye to it, rather. And, and that's what it is. All they see is, hey, man, they're taking guns off the streets. They got arrests. They're taking drugs off the streets. So it's getting us results. All the while, they understand that there's perjury charge, that these cops have been caught for perjury. These cops, they're planting stuff. Like, I think they all know that type of stuff is going on. But it's almost like one of those things where, hey, yeah, it's great as long as you don't get caught. Once you get caught, you're on your own. I think that's how most of the police departments were playing this. And you see that as an example when, it may have been episode 3, but Wayne Jenkins sees when he saw like this guy hanging outside of his house, They warn, Wayne Jenkins warns him to go inside. He's upset. He doesn't immediately go inside. So Wayne spins the block and he ends up beating the guy half to death. And, the next day when he goes into the office, I think this cop specifically has some type of desk job or something. And he's like, oh man, we got a complaint that you beat up a guy, that you told him to go inside and he didn't. Whoop-de-whoop-de-whoop. And at first, Wayne Jenkins is like worried about it. He's like, oh damn, man. You're like, he tried to make an excuse. And then the guy lets him know quickly that he's just joking with him. He was like, man, you should have hit him in the first place. You shouldn't have given him no warning. So these cops knows what's going on, but they look the other way on purpose. And so that's what's frustrating about that whole thing. And just my final point, the one guy, I think he was like the newest member of the gun trace task force. And he didn't want to necessarily take money, but he took money just to fit in and get in the good graces of Wayne Jenkins and so forth. The guy claimed that even though he took money, he never spent it. As a matter of fact, he either put it back into the safe or wherever they stole the money, or he just threw it away. I don't believe it, but then again, these type of stories are, dramatized just for the Hollywood effect and the storyline. I highly doubt a guy is going to throw $20,000 that no one is going to miss. So, nevertheless, man, as I said earlier, I think this was the most intense episode so far. I am looking forward to the final two final two episodes. I think it's only going to get even more intense. So I'm looking forward to seeing what's going on. Let me know what you think about the show so far yourself. And love it or hate it. That's just my opinion. Peace.